Respected Principal Sri Suresh, the most revered teachers who have made all these students successful today. I'm very happy to see and hear about the success of these young students, chiseled very well by the teachers of the Bhavan's Adarsh Vidyalaya. The chairman, Sri Venugopal Sri Govind, Mr. Ramagutti, Mrs. Renuka Menon, Mrs. Veena Vishwanathan, Sri Appukuttan, Jayachandran, and all my beloved students. It is fashionable these days to begin anything with a disclaimer. When a movie starts, it says, no animals were injured during the making of this movie. Well, I also start one with a disclaimer, or more importantly, a confession, that I have never secured a first rank in my life. But then I have not been a last ranker either. I am surprised as you are, to be a guest of honor. Looking back at my good old days of youth, I was as insecure as each one of you, worrying about what I will be in my life. And as I went through my life, it was a story of survival. This story of survival had splendid failures. Between all of this, a lot of hard grinding work, sacrificing a lot of sleep, good food, entertainment, and there's a lot of good things that normal people would appreciate. So let me tell you why survival is important. I am sure most of you would have seen this movie, masterpiece by the director Christopher Nolan, called as Dunkirk. Dunkirk is actually an island between France and Britain. In the late 30s, when Germany invaded Europe, they occupied the European nations one by one, France, Netherlands, Belgium, etc. The French troops and the British troops who opposed this occupation were trounced, and they retreated and got marooned in this island called as Dunkirk. Against the formidable fire of the German Air Force, a spectacular story of lifting these soldiers from this marooned island back to the British mainland happened. That's a story of Dunkirk. So as these soldiers landed back, defeated, hungry, without appetite, and most importantly, losing all their self-respect, they are given food, clothing, etc. by the people in the mainland. And as they get out of the train and leave for their camps, one old man who is blind touches the face of all the people as he hands out food and says, "Well done, my lad." Every time he touches the face of a soldier who is retreating from the war, who has been defeated, he says, "Well done, my lad." One of the soldiers react to him saying that, "What is it? We were defeated." The old man says, "No, you were defeated, but you have survived. That is enough for now. Because if you survive, you will definitely live another day for another battle." So the important thing is to appreciate the fact that we have survived. And once we have survived, learned that we have survived, or we have done good to reach 15 to 20 years of age, what is the next big thing that you should always be thinking about? Gratitude. Why is it that we should be grateful for all that is happening to us? You are studying in one of the best schools of this country, the Bhavan's Adarsh Vidyalaya. You have very good food. Most of your parents take very good care of you. And most importantly, you have living standards far better than average Indian poor person from a village. Often we forget the sight of all the good things that happen to us and keep complaining about it. Let me narrate Now, I'm going to narrate a few stories for you today. Let me narrate a story from my experience, from my work experience, an incident which happened about 15 years ago. When I was operating, I had operated on on a young man, along with my professor. We removed a large tumor in the back of the brain, called as the vestibular schwannoma. And as we removed two of the nerves close to it, people who are doing biology will know, glossopharyngeal and vagus nerves got injured because it was intermingled with the tumor. And what was these two nerves concerned with? It was concerned with swallowing of food and liquids, solid foods as well as liquid food. So immediately after the surgery, this young man in his 30s was given a nasogastric tube, a tube that went from his nose right into his stomach, through which mashed food made into a paste was driven down with the help of water. One important factor that happens to a person who is on a nasogastric tube that he cannot taste the food. Imagine the plight of a person who cannot taste his food. You can see it, he can feel it, he can smell it, but he cannot taste it. So 2 weeks after the surgery, this gentleman got discharged from our hospital. He was asked to report after a month to find out whether the nerves have regained their function so that the tube can be removed and oral feeding can be resumed. Unfortunately, at the end of 1 month after his discharge, this gentleman's swallowing reflex had not come back, which meant that he had to remain with the tube for some more time. I asked him to review with me after a month again. He came back after a month and I tested him for his swallowing and I found that it was inadequate. What happens if your swallowing reflex is not good and if you try to attempt to drink fluids or eat solids? It goes straight into the lung and creates a mess out there called as pneumonia, aspiration pneumonia. In order to prevent that, you bypass the whole food pipe so that it reaches down right into the stomach. The food reaches right down into the stomach. Months passed. Every month, this gentleman will come and ask me whether he can have food. And every time, my reply was negative. On his 6th visit to meet me, he begged and told me, "Doctor, the only thing that I appreciate in the morning is a cup of tea. Can I have a drop of it?" I warned him that if you were to have tea, it will go straight into the lung and cause pneumonia, which means that you will be readmitted into our ICU and kept on a ventilator. It was almost a year on that day, fateful day, he came to me when I checked his swallowing reflexes and I found that the nerves had recovered well. I gently, nimbly removed the tube and watched him drink a cup of tea. I asked him just to take a sip and wait to find out whether he's coughing or choking. Imagine the joy of that man when he had that humble sip of tea. I realized one big factor. Many a days, we find out ourselves eating and drinking without knowing what we are doing. We would be glued to a screen, a computer or a mobile or something else when we eat and drink. We are never grateful for what the taste of tea and coffee and all the good food that we eat because we are busy with other things. My dear children, we need to be mindful of all the good things that happen to us. Be grateful for all the good that God has given to you, whether it is your parents, your school, your friends, your clothes, your food. Everything owes itself to the contribution and love of people around us. So be grateful when you survive. The third important factor about which I would like to talk about is academic performance. I'm sure having reached here, I have gone through several competitive examinations. I have failed in a few too, because I was not good at it at that point of time. But what I did was I came back with a vengeance and did that again to pass the examination. Now, if you want to be successful, whether it is in academics or in sports or in culture, like in dance or in writing or anything, the most important thing is the amount of work hard work and time that you need to devote to it. Back in 2007, I was on a short stint at the Hinduja Hospital in Bombay. Hinduja Hospital, as some of you might know, is located in Mumbai on the seashore. As you walk down to Prabhadevi, there is this iconic ground called as Shivaji Park on the left side. Remember, Shivaji Park is where many of the great cricketers of the Indian team were trained. It was 2007 and Sachin Tendulkar was at his peak. I had a chance to watch games there. Sachin was an international star. He was not playing there. But what I saw was his coach, Ramakant Achrekar, grand old man who had trained so many young men to become great cricketers. As I watched him, there was an old man who was sitting next to me and watching the game of cricket and watching Achrekar train the young minds. He narrated the story of Sachin Tendulkar to me under the tutelage of Ramakant Achrekar. Sachin would play us every shot with his bat in an imaginary way, 500 to 1,000 times a day. Imagine somebody swinging the bat in air, anticipating, imagining that the ball is coming, or even when the real ball comes, 500 to 1,000 times a day. When next time when Shoaib Akhtar bowls something at 140 kilometers per hour, our man Sachin will not require to think about it. He just have to play it out of an instinct. So what training, repeated hours of doing the same thing, sometimes boring, but what is important is those boring repetitions lead you to be successful. So what it does is you have to defeat your own negative behaviors, to do your work, hard work again and again until you become successful in your chosen field of life. When I was invited by Mrs. Pushpa Krishnan to address the school students, she told me, speak about something called stress. All of us, whether you are in school or in college or in a profession like mine, are going through a lot of stress in our lives. Stress is a very, very undeniable facet of our lives. At every point of time, there is stress. How do we handle it is something which we need to learn. I am reminded of the life of a neurologist, psychiatrist called as Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was trained as a medical doctor in the 1920s in Vienna at Austria. By 1930s, he had become a psychiatrist and a neurologist, and he was practicing in Vienna when Germany conquered Austria and Vienna. Victor was just married when the Germans came in, and he had to abort his child because the Germans did not allow Jews to have children. Soon, Victor was carted off in a cattle truck to a concentration camp called as Auschwitz. He did not know where his wife was. His wife was taken to another camp. Thus, the husband and wife parted their ways. And as Victor was being taken to the concentration camp for hard labor, what he held close to his chest was the manuscript of the book that he was writing. He was writing a textbook of psychiatry for which he had spent so many hours. He had kept the book close to his heart. And at the gates of the concentration camp, the Nazi soldiers, called as the SS, War and SS troops, searched him and confiscated this book, which was actually his lifetime effort. They destroyed the book and put him in the prison. Life in the prison, in the concentration camp, was not easy. There was this cold weather, there was lack of food, there were a lot of epidemics like typhus, and most importantly, hard labor in factories which fueled the war efforts of Germany. Many Jews who were along with him perished during their days in the concentration camp. Victor Campbell told to himself that one day he will get out of the camp. He started a dialogue with his wife, an imaginary one, every day, talking about all the good things that had happened in his life, all the things that happens in his everyday life, including the flowers that come, the birds that fly around him, the food that he gets to eat, the sunshine that comes in, and all that. And also, Viktor Frankl always used to write a page of his book in his mind. This way, he ensured that the book never left his mind. And also, the thoughts of his wife, which kept him going. In 1945, by April, Germany was defeated in the Great Second World War. American troops moved into Auschwitz and liberated all the prisoners. Frankl, I'm sorry, I misspelled the name as Campbell. It is Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl too was liberated. He went back to Austria. He knew his parents were dead. His brother was dead. His wife was dead. But then he had his book close to his heart. The book's name is Man's Search for a Meaning. If you have a meaning for your existence, the wherewithal or the means of that existence will come in front of you. So, my dear children, always find a greater meaning to your everyday life. It is not just food, sleep, and entertainment, but work which will help you change your destiny and therefore change the destinies of people around you. For me, when I come out after a hard day's work in my hospital, there is always a family waiting for me to say some good news about their near dear one, whom I had operated or is in the ICU. When I see my good words, a smile comes to their face. And at times, I do lose patience and I have to make them unhappy. But most of the times, the meaning for my life was all the patients whose lives I could change, the destinies I could change, snatch them from the jaws of ill health and deaths. And that has made my life meaningful. So, my dear children, all the stress of life will move away as it happened to Viktor Frankl. When you think of a greater meaning for your existence, for your everyday life, for your days and weeks and months of your life, for your future, and beyond. I am sure by this time you would have understood what difficulties mean to us. No great event in our life happens because of luck. A luck comes when you have put in a lot of dedicated, diligent effort. And when you are putting those efforts, there will be a lot of adverse moments. It is here that how to beat this adversity, what adversity does to you is I bring in another story. This too happened in my life when I was doing my +2 in Trivandrum at a place called Karamana. Karamana had two professors in biology, Mr. Parameshwaran Pillai and Mr. Parameshwara Iyer. Mr. Parameshwara Iyer and Parameshwaran Pillai taught at the University College in Trivandrum, and they were great friends. And whenever they met, their conversation was about the flora and fauna around them. One day, Pillai sir came to Parameshwara Iyer's house and he looked at one corner. There was one guava tree standing there. Ms. Iyer sir replied, as soon as he saw Pillai sir's glance went there, "This is one of my failures. It has never borne a fruit nor borne on a flower." Pillai sir gave him a solution. Cut all the branches of the trees, branches of this tree, except a few in the top. Iyer sir was in a dilemma. He used to love trees. To cut all these branches was something which he couldn't bring himself around to do. But what he did was, he took this advice and cut a few branches in the bottom, leaving only a couple of branches at the top. Iyer sir had to leave his house for some time, for a month, because of his wife's ill health. And when he came back, the first thing that he noticed was this guava tree had flowered and borne fruits. The moral that you derive from this story, the message that you derive from this story is that when the tree lost all its branches, except a few in the top, its survival was under threat. And when its survival was under threat, It came up with features which helped it to adapt to the difficult circumstances and survive. It bore more flowers and fruits. So this is what happens when we also experience adversities in our life. Adversities are one way in which nature chisels us to become better human beings, better professionals, better, whatever you are doing. So whenever you see adversity, don't see it as a stressful event. You always see that this is a point in time when you have to go through some difficulty for that great morning that is going to happen when you overcome this adversity and come out on top of it. My dear children, I can go on with more and more stories of this kind. I am sure this meeting will get unnecessarily prolonged because of my stories. And as all good things have to end, I must end this talk with this quote from my favorite author, Dr. A.J. Cronin. A.J. Cronin wrote a few books, and his masterpiece was, of course, Citadel. One of my favorite books that A.J. Cronin wrote was a book called as Adventures in Two Worlds. Here, he comes up with a very beautiful quote. The man's greatest victory is victory over oneself. So, my dear children, learn to defeat all those negative things around you, inside you, outside you, which makes you go towards defeat. Defeat all those negative forces inside you so that you can be a better human being, you can be a better professional, you can be a better doctor, you can be a better engineer, you can be a better son, brother, husband, etc., etc. I must end my talk at this point of time with a favorite quote from my principal from Christ Nagar School, Father Gerald Tevelaseri, which goes as follows. Good, better, best. Never let them rest. Good, better, best. Never let them rest until good becomes better and better becomes best. Good, better, best. Never let them rest until good becomes better and better becomes best. I wish you all the very best in your lives, in your professions, in your personal life, in your professional life, and all throughout. May you all become great human beings who will help to change the world for a better state. Thank you very much for inviting me and for patiently listening to me. Thank you again, all the teachers and students of Bharati Vidya Bhavan.